Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, sorry I'm a bit later than I normally am in the morning. I'm in Tucson, Arizona this morning, and I forgot. Tucson is one of the states that does not observe daylight saving time. So when I got here, set my alarm for this morning, adjusted for 1 hour, and I should have adjusted for 2. But since I'm down here, I thought it'd be a good thing to just talk about the upcoming summer forecast and the potential lack of a strong monsoon, and what's currently shaping up to make me think that, but of course what could always change in the meantime. So let's begin down here. So I went down to the lower Colorado River Basin and reconstructed from 1950 to present a precipitation record for July through September, kind of the main months of the monsoon. Now, of course, you can get some monsoonal moisture early, but this is kind of the main time frame. And what I did was I went down and ranked them according to the wettest years. And I wanted to pull out those wet years and kind of understand what needs to be happening in order for this to occur. And long story short, if you kind of look at it, what we need to be doing is building quite a bit of heat throughout summer across the plains and across the northern Rockies and the West Coast. And the more heat that we build into this area allows for kind of what we kind of call a heat low. In other words, lower overall pressure, in this area simply due to the fact that it's just hot. And what this does is this drives a thermally direct circulation that pulls moisture off of the Pacific and moisture out of the Gulf. And what it does is it comes across Mexico and then eventually gets into this region and blows up storms. And those storms can be absolutely enormous and deliver a tremendous amount of rain in a short amount of time. But that's the setup. That's why this area tends to be cooler. So when I look at the composite years, which are the ones up here that tended to have the strongest monsoons, this was the temperature pattern across the United States. Precipitation-wise, it was really dry here. And the reason it was so dry in this area was because that's a region where we had to build in higher atmospheric pressure. You see, the best setup for the southwest monsoon is to have high pressure somewhere over the southern plains, maybe toward the mid-south, maybe over the Ozarks, this area, and have low pressure off the coast of California. So if you have a low over here, you're driving in flow like this. And this is what delivers both the Pacific and the Atlantic moisture to drive the southwest monsoons. We need heat here, and we need heat north, anywhere north, and then we just need to have low pressure on the west side and high pressure on the east side. You can see it better if I just do a reconstruction of the low level, about a mile above our heads, height anomalies. So we're looking at pressure differences. So it ends up doing something like this, all right? And there's that large ridge in this area. So that's the kind of flow that needs to be set up. Now, is it strongly related to El Nino and La Nina? Kind of. It's not a slam dunk. You don't have to have one of the other to drive the southwestern monsoon. If you even look across some of these years are strong La Nina years, but some of them are also kind of tail end of El Ninos as well. So we just have to be careful to understand that it is a midsummer heat issue that drives the southwestern monsoon. And if the southwestern monsoon is going, it's just important to know this, just to be thinking about things later. If the southwestern monsoon is going, there's likely a very, very dry signal in parts of the plains and Midwest, Mid-South, this whole region and through here. Now, why I don't think that this is going to be a year of a strong southwestern monsoon is there's a lot to overcome. This was just released, I believe, yesterday. They always release the North American drought monitors in the middle of the month. And why I'm concerned is that notice how much of Mexico, getting into southwestern Texas, getting into New Mexico and Arizona, we still have drought. So the idea here being that if that drought still exists as we get into summer, which I think it will, how are we going to be able to pull moisture over this and not have the locally dry air kind of extract it and take some of the moisture out? That's what my concern is as we look kind of at this North American picture of drought. Also, I just want to make a point that despite better snow that's come across parts of the Canadian prairie and some early season rains, it wasn't really enough to undo the longer standing drought across the Canadian prairie. That's been around. So later on today, we will get a new drought update for the U.S. only. It comes out every Thursday. So we're looking forward to seeing those updates here in a few moments. But just a reminder, they only include precipitation up until Tuesday. So some of the recent rains that move through parts of the very dry regions here in Iowa may not show too much of a reflection of a change. But we'll make sure and look at that when that drought monitor is updated. So one last thing to think about. First of all, today at the end, I'm going to talk about 1995. That's the year that I'm going to pick out and analyze for you. But just to recap what we're thinking about here, I'm going to show you the models again. The NMME, which is much more aggressive on the decline of the ocean temperatures into strong La Nina, versus the European, which is slower. In both situations, they seem to have this drought issue coming out of Mexico into the Four Corners states. And this is May, June, July. This is June, July, August. We've looked at this several times. This would be in there as July, August, September. So just take note that it's not overly aggressive on the development of a good, strong southwestern monsoon. And this is August, September, October. Now remember, these are just model simulations, and so much can change over the next 60 days to change it up. And so I'll just say this. If we get into early summer and we have rapid heat developing and drought expanding in this area, we'll end up getting a feedback loop of higher pressure, and that could start to really change the way that the southwestern monsoon would set up. So even though I'm focusing on the southwest monsoon, understand that it's a national response in the weather patterns that we just need to keep an eye on. But there you go. That's kind of the outlook overall, again, reviewed by the models here. What I'm waiting on is the newest data from the CPC, and then we'll do a kind of full look at all of our long-range forecast information and stitch it all together here very soon. Okay, yesterday we watched again as large storms blew up in parts of the eastern Corn Belt, getting out of parts of Ohio and into Pennsylvania, with some strong storms farther to the north of this as well, as this current low continues to move its way east. Take note of where the lingering front will sit. You can see this broad cloud shield in through here. We're going to keep an eye on that area. But in total, this was now the 2-day look at the severe storm reports. 182 reports back on the 16th. Remember, this updated right in the middle of my recording yesterday. 21 tornadoes in total. And if we come over here to the 17th, I might get that to click through. There's the 17th. We had, again, more hail and more straight line wind damage. And I saw a lot of kind of video evidence of some pretty nasty storms that rolled through this part of Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and getting into Pennsylvania. We also had storms on the backside that came out of Kansas into parts of Missouri. And we're continuing to monitor those this morning, but I did want to show you that just in the last 24 hours, just taking a quick look at some of the hail scars across the country, just to continue to see where these damage reports are adding up. So where are the storms this morning? You can see this lightning map right now pulling through parts of Kansas and Missouri. And we did have some showers out ahead of this. In fact, let's go have a quick look at the radar. So let's get an update on this. I pulled this up just a little while ago. There we go. This is a current look at the radar, pulling some rain through parts of Iowa. And the storms coming through Missouri, pushing in right over across the river here. We're going to keep an eye on the same region again later today for the risk of severe storms. And notice on the backside there is some snow coming out of the Canadian Prairie, some in Montana, and some here in parts of Wyoming. We'll keep an eye on Colorado and Nebraska, parts of Nebraska for some snow soon. And scattered showers early this morning down across the lower Mississippi River Valley, as well as where the main low is pushing through in parts of the Northeast. Okay, so later on today, Storm Prediction Center has identified a pretty large area of Missouri, Illinois, parts of Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, where they've got an enhanced risk. But this should be an interesting day for me because I am supposed to fly out this afternoon from Tucson to go to Dallas, and then Dallas, Chicago home late tonight. And I'm a little excited about this because I might be landing in Dallas about the time that the atmosphere is going to start to pop with storms. But anything that pushes me later in the day, I might miss some flights home. So I don't know. I hope I make it home in time tomorrow. Tonight to just kind of a regular day tomorrow. But we'll have to wait and see on this. This is where things get to on the 19th. So again, we have a marginal risk across parts of the southeast, just to continue to keep an eye on this. So I want to take you to the high-res rapid refresh model, and this is called the HER, and we're going to pick this up about 6 a.m. this morning. So some of the preceding rain not well picked up by the model. That's okay. But we see the convection here as it pulls through early this morning, 10, 11 o'clock, moving across the river. And then we're going to watch the backside of this right here late this afternoon and this evening for pushing in some of those stronger storms. And the high-resolution rapid refresh model is kind of looking at the potential for a squall line in through this area. So we'll watch the radar for this later today. Again, this is in that enhanced risk region. And you can just see the main boundary farther to the south on which we're looking for those storms. And so, be honest, I'm kind of hoping, I know not a lot of people would do this, but I'm kind of hoping we get to fly into this tonight just so I can watch it out the window and and also just see some deep convection. But this is going to pull through, and you can see the precipitation in the overnight hours tonight into tomorrow morning, moving through Tennessee, Kentucky, down into Arkansas, the low up over parts of Michigan, getting into this part of Ontario. And then we're going to watch those storms as we get into the day on Friday, move into parts of the southeast as scattered rain moves into the northeast. So that's just a quick look at the simulated radar data from the high-resolution rapid refresh. Let's jump over to the NAM high-resolution model and just kind of see what it's got in store. So this is at 7 a.m. this morning. As we play it forward, a similar look overall, a little bit different timing on the potential for the, the squall line of storms coming through here. In fact, the high-res NAM has got a much different scenario, more storms farther to the south in Illinois toward the Ohio River late. But we'll keep an eye on this, so please watch the radar if you're in this area today all the way down. Now notice the snow on the backside. Some convective snow, it looks like here, some snow bursts. And then watch parts of Colorado as the cold air noses down. So this is 5 a.m. Friday morning. We're going to watch this system exit east. Snow, wind, cold on the backside. There's that snow, Wyoming, Nebraska. But as we keep an eye on Colorado right here, this is partly elevation driven, plenty of cold air in place, and the models by Friday night are trying to drop some snow in a significant part of Colorado. After the heat we've seen here, we were up way into the 80s, and now we're looking at overnight snows on Friday night to early Saturday morning that could press into parts of Nebraska as well. That front lingers and sits down here over parts of the of Texas, which is where we're going to see the heaviest rains after that. Okay, just thinking this morning, I was trying to see if there was some snow early today. So we're looking at the surface obs here, Colorado, getting into Kansas and Nebraska. And I don't see, there's some snow in this part of Wyoming right there. But take a look at these winds gusting, 30 miles an hour out of the north, and the temperatures here in the 30s and 40s, and even farther to the north, coming out of parts of, sorry about that. Let's go back to that. Coming out of parts of, get that to go again. There we go. Out of parts of Montana into North Dakota, we've got temperatures in the 20s, winds gusting to over 30 miles an hour here. This is a pretty brutal start to the day. We'll talk about those temperatures in a few moments, but that's where we do have our wind advisories out early this morning. We have a frost in parts of the Columbia Basin as well, and here as we approach kind of the Puget Sound, broader Puget Sound area in the Olympic Mountains, just taking a look at what our all hazards map looks like. Okay, we've been monitoring this pattern, and a big, not concern, but a thing I've been discussing is the potential one for this to deliver some cold air. We'll take a look at the new frost in just a few moments. But the fact that the atmosphere early next week continues to keep cooler air across the east through the 24th, I think that's going to be the last push of cold air. But then as we get out there to midweek next week, the European ensemble is now doing a better job resolving this western trough. So all week long, we've said, the flow is wanting to do something like this, and that southwest flow tends to just, you take troughs over the mountains, they develop what we call lee cyclogenesis, lows off the coast, off the mountains. We have a discussion about the speed at which they're going to progress and their potential to return moisture. And the AI system was the first to kind of pick up better on the depth of these troughs that the ensembles are now picking up on. So if you just take a look at the AI, and that's the broader trough it's got out there on the 26th. This is next weekend. And that's going to come through, and it just looks as though we're going to finish this month of April with another round of severe weather in the plains, and the potential, if this can slow down, to give us some much-needed rains in the middle part of the country. I don't necessarily see this linked up with a lot of really, really cold air. It's just a broader trough that gets into the southwest. It'll cool things down, but it's not as though it's a deep plunging bit of really, really cold air that's going to come across the country. It will be chilly, but I'm not worried about a major deep frost out of this one as we finish April and start May. And beginning May, look at what the AIFS is doing. The artificial forecasting system is continuing to deliver some sort of troughs in this area that is getting the flow to come around like this. Now, that's a typical spring pattern to see that kind of behavior happening. But we need to see what this means in terms of total precip. So let's just do 1 week out. Okay, I showed you deep into week 2. Let's just do 1 week out and compare the models. We have this going through right now. We'll take a look at the next round that's going to come through this area as well. Also the lingering front down here in parts of Texas. But again, our drier areas continue to show up on the maps quite well. This is the 7-day European Artificial Intelligence. This is the national blend of models. And again, a lot of this is coming through today, but then we're going to watch that front stall out here and then multiple chances of rain throughout parts of the Northeast, given the system that just went through now and the one that's going to follow. Let's flip this over to the GFS. So overall, a similar look from the GFS for the next 7 days, and here's the operational European model run. So a quick look at 4 different models. The WPC is still not up and functional. Hopefully they'll get that resolved very soon. We'll make sure to get that into the mix as well. That'll give us 5 different models to be looking at here and comparing. Okay, let's get a sense on the timing by going after the GFS operational versus the European. So as we play through today, getting into tomorrow morning, just take note that the models on Friday night are both putting down that snow here in addition to what you saw from the NAM. So just want to point that out here in Colorado. The deeper low moving out of parts of Ontario into Quebec, and that's what's going to deliver the showers through at the end of this week into the weekend for the Northeast. Now that front lingers. It sits right in through here. So this is by Saturday morning, getting into Saturday afternoon and evening, working our way into Sunday. That's where we're going to have multiple, chances of rain down here. Let's just rock back and forth over that again. This is Saturday morning through Sunday morning. Getting into Sunday afternoon and evening, that pushes into the southeast. Now, here we are out early next week. We're going to watch colder air finally move out of the east and a chance for some showers to move in. It's in both models here, coming out of Montana, getting down into parts of Minnesota and Iowa. You can see it pretty clearly here as this next little shortwave sneaks right along the U.S.-Canada border early next week. But that one doesn't really deepen too much, but notice as it pulls through New England, some of the models are attempting to drop enough cold air out here on the 24th to put some snow deep into the interior of New England. We're going to look at those cold temperatures in a moment. But there's the high pressure that's supporting the cold on the backside. See this? What happens after that is the west drops a deep trough. And then take a look. Friday the 26th, getting into the following weekend, there's a big low that's expected to come out in the midsection of the country here. And that's when that broader trough sits over the west and then pulls out into the midsection of the U.S. So we've got plenty of activity in this pattern to continue to monitor. The week 2 anomalies are really picking up on this. And I'm going to tell you something. The GFS was the first to see it, along with the AI. And I'm going to be putting on these maps the AI week 1 and week 2 precipitation anomalies very soon. I just get a stretch of days to get that done. But take a look at the European ensemble this morning. Much, much wetter trend overall. And again, you know the area that I'm concerned about. How far back to the west are we going to be able to bring this moisture? Can we deliver needed moisture into Kansas and Missouri and parts of the Midwest? Does the southeast continue to get more of an extended break after what had been extremely wet conditions throughout much of March and early April? Can we return more of this moisture back into the northern plains, especially Montana, which has seen this drying trend in the models? Will this be the kind of corrective action? Is the trough deep enough to do that? These are always the questions we ask of a week 2 forecast. I just wanted to point that out to you. But the significance overall is about what it does to that moisture in the midsection of the country. So just to show you the top 16 inches, we're really able to identify a pretty large area here of well below adequate soil moisture that needs to be rectified by these spring rains. And so we'll monitor this late April storm system carefully to see if it's capable of putting a dent into some of this. Okay, temperature-wise, I'm actually not ready to talk about temperatures. I got my slides out of order here. Sorry. I want to show you some probabilities. What did I do with those? Let's go pull it up right here. Sorry about that. It's been a weird morning for me here. Let's go to the European ensemble, and I would like to look at the 0Z run surface precip anomalies. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Probabilities. There we go. Who's dry? I don't want this view. There we go. So this is your next 7 days. Who stays below half an inch? All right. But watch this just go away as we include week 2. That's when that active pattern really starts to show up. And if we now look on the wetter side of this over the next 2 weeks, the chances of grabbing an inch above 90% across a large area here. We've got a lot to be monitoring with this pattern as it evolves at the end of this month, but that's I wanted to make sure I showed you that here. Okay, let's now try to get back into order here, and let's talk about temperatures. Early this morning, back in the teens in Montana, so we talked about this 4 to 5 day stretch of colder weather coming through here. And as we look at where our frost potential is, this is the next 7 days. So I'm starting to see something like this 36 corridor to 72 to 74. If you are along that corridor right in through here, I think we're going to get frost, given the cold temperatures that are coming in. And New England, we've got, I think, two more chances of it here. We'll show you that again in a few seconds. But this is my frost map for the next 7 days. Let's look at those minimum temperatures. Here is this morning's min temperatures getting into tomorrow morning. Get another very cold one in Montana. There's that frost line. This would be Saturday morning, getting into Sunday morning. There it is. And Monday morning, right into this area. Playing forward into Tuesday and Wednesday, another round of colder air coming in here. But before I show you beyond that, let's go out and look at the high temperatures. Today's highs, getting into tomorrow on Friday, struggling to get out of the upper 30s and 40s in the northern plains. West gets some much needed heat, but take a look at how cold we're going to drop these temperatures down here. Saturday's highs may struggle to hit 50, like around Amarillo. Just something to think about there. Then we get into Sunday, the lingering frontal boundary, the rains. This is Monday, the west taking on that heat. Tuesday, Wednesday, cooling down in the west only because the next trough is going to start to show up there. You can see the cooler air around the Great Lakes as well. What I wanted to stress was next Wednesday morning, this is where I've got the frost line in the European model. And as we go to Thursday morning, take a look at that. This needs to be monitored very, very carefully. The European model is really deepening this trough over the Great Lakes next Thursday morning. And it's delivering the frost, the 32-degree line, pretty far to the south. I'm going to have to monitor this very, very carefully, given the temperatures we need to be seeing. It's one of these things where we just touch frost in the morning, and this would be Friday. It seems as though after that, we're not dropping really cold air back into place, but we need to keep an eye out. Again, just to give you the timing on that, that's going to be Thursday morning, and then again on Friday morning. This is next Thursday morning and next Friday morning that the models are still picking up on this. All right. So day 5 through 10, you start to see that being reflected here. And then the broader trough coming into the west to set up the active midsection of the country. The GFS ensemble out day 10 through 15, which gets us into the beginning of May, still showing overall mild, no deep centers of cold air. And the European model is even a bit more mild. That's day 5 through 10. And this is day 10 through 15. Still reflecting. So when I talk about mild, I'm talking about east of the Rocky Mountains, but still reflecting the broader troughs in the west are going to set us up with a very active end of April, beginning of May. All right, let's get into a little bit of a longer range discussion. You know that right now our global teleconnections are not overly strong, so I'm going to show you what the models are doing with it and try to make a story out of this. This is the new May outlook in terms of precipitation across the U.S. And something that's been interesting is the model has kind of shown up with a little bit drier signal right here. And the reason why I find this interesting is that those historical analogs had a bit of a drier May in this area as well. I still think there's going to be activity. Don't hear me say drier and interpret it as dry. I just think it's going to be something that this needs to be monitored. It could open up some planting windows, but we need moisture in May in these areas. On the temperature side of it, let's go back to that 30-day outlook on temperatures. Overall, quite warm in the central United States, and this has been a pattern we've seen for quite some time. It's not really reflective of the longer range historical analogs. We just tended to be near normal, a little cooler than normal here with warmth in the northwest, but it is what it is. The model's comparing to the climatology. Okay, so here's what I want to do next. I want to show you an animation. Watch this reset. There we go. From January, mid-January till now on ocean temperatures, just so you can see kind of the slow demise of this El Nino event. And you start to see these flashes of colder water showing up here. And you can also pay close attention to the changes across the North Pacific. Watch this one more time with me. So one of the things we'll note is the slowdown of the trade winds. That was going on back in January, and then the speeding up of the trade winds as La Nina begins to kind of leave. In fact, we can see that pretty clearly here. If we go back and have a look at what those trade winds were doing, back in December through February, this represents westerly winds. So the trade winds normally blow from the east, which means this is a weakened trade wind system. But what have they done lately? They've gone back to normal and started to speed up. See the blues in there? And that's what we're watching. That's going to be the transition we're keeping an eye on. So looking at these historical years, the next one I'm going to compare to would be 1995. So let's see what things look like in 2024 right now compared to 1995, which was this. Now, this was also a year that we had a weak El Nino in winter that transitioned to a weak La Nina by the following fall. But the ocean temperature pattern looked a lot different in spring, much colder across from Japan to the Aleutian Islands all the way to the Gulf of Alaska. And we had already seen quite a bit of colder water emerging in this area. So why look at 1995? Well, 1995 has captured my attention because it was so active in the Atlantic hurricane season, and we're predicting that again this year. Now, there's many ways by which you can get an active Atlantic, of course, but it certainly helps that in 95 everything was so warm here. What's interesting is this. We saw some warm water get in here, but a negative PMM, that's the cold water here, and this cold water nosing into this area was really reflecting a change in the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, one that I don't anticipate seeing this year. So if you're curious, I don't think that 1995 is one of our stronger analogs. I'm still really getting hung up on 2020, given the analysis we did yesterday. But I do want to complete the analysis. March to April, this is what the temperature patterns look like in 1995. We're certainly not here this year, right? It was so much more mild. Our only colder weather was in the west, so this is not a good analog in spring, certainly. And on the precipitation side of it, no, we've been wet over here March into April, very, very wet, and not so wet in this area. So 95 doesn't fully match up in terms of the precipitation patterns in spring. So what eventually did happen, though, in summer was this. Deep trough of low pressure here. So the flow came around and built up into a large ridge that anchored somewhere over Ontario and the border with Quebec. And what was so important about that was where it anchored the dryness and where it anchored the heat. So just take a look at this. June through August, very dry in the western and central Corn Belt. Very, very dry across the south, way down here. Wet primarily due to tropical systems, early tropical systems here, but very dry in New England. So this was a very, very interesting year because of where it placed the greatest heat, which was mostly in this area. And while I don't think this is a strong analog, we need to analyze these years to know why we're using all of them in composite. And I think you're starting to see the story here. Even though all these years we continue to go through had this similar behavior with El Nino collapsing, none of them look the same. And that's why we're struggling to try to figure out what this upcoming summer is going to look like and compare it to the models which we reviewed at the beginning. So here's 1995. That's what it did. And here we are now, way up here, and we have questions as to how far down this goes. So a lot to continue to analyze with this. Where I want to finish today is I want to talk about some global weather patterns. Quite cold in Europe. Remember the big ridge that built up into the North Atlantic, dropping that trough across Europe. Very warm once you get east of the Black Sea, though. Looking elsewhere, take a look at the heat that's down coming now into this part of South America. And that, of course, is an area that's getting a drier and drier and drier signal with time. Finally starting to play into the longer-term analysis we did for the early shutdown of the monsoon. But before we focus in on South America again, I want to point out very wet weather that we continue to see here south of the Yangtze River. And you can see the storms continuing to hit parts of like Pakistan over toward Iran, and how wet we're going to be here in Eastern Europe versus a drier pattern in Western Europe. Just a couple things to take note of. And if we come back down to South America, the new May outlook continues to show that drier bias, which is an early exit of the monsoon. Could be a critical story developing here for safrinha corn. So with that, I'm going to stop. Tell you all have a good rest of the day, and we'll pick up again tomorrow morning. Thanks.